I know that there was rapture talk, but it's not happening just yet. So until the Lord comes back, which the Bible does tell us that it will be like in the days of Noah, where people were marrying and drinking and going about their lives, until that day comes, you keep building. Until that day comes, you keep prospering. Until that day comes, you keep believing that God has plans of good for you, and walk by faith and not by sight. Do not allow fear to burden you or derail you or delay you from what the Lord has for you. Hi friends, so happy to have you back. Sandy Salgado here. If you are new, welcome. All you need to know about this podcast is that here we have honest conversations. We have deep conversations. More often than not, they are convicting conversations, but they are all to edify the body of Christ. So no matter how you got here, I do hope that you stick around. I have had a message in my heart that I have wanted to share with you guys for some time now. Given the circumstances, given the way that society has kind of unfolded, has kind of played out these past couple of years, especially since 2020, I feel that a lot of individuals lost their way. A lot of individuals had goals. A lot of people were set on a specific path. And with everything that happened in 2020 and that has happened ever since, we've kind of lost our way, a lot of us. And this message I'm sharing with you in the hopes that it will revive something inside of you, that it will realign yourself with the path that God has for you. If you have perhaps lost your way, or have felt uninspired, or have felt that these dreams that are inside of you have gone dormant, or if perhaps you've just been in a season of complacency, my hope with this message is that something inside of you reignites once again. Something inside of you wakes up. Something inside of you says, enough is enough. Now is the time. Just like the Lord told Queen Esther through Mordecai, perhaps salvation will come through any other way, but perhaps you were placed in the position that you are now for such a time as this, to bring salvation to your people. And I know I've said it in many of my messages before. I love her story. I love the way that we are able to embrace her story and appropriate ourselves of it, because perhaps we were positioned in certain places, in certain environments, to be able to be light in the middle of so much darkness. I want to talk about the dreams that the Lord placed inside of you. I want to talk about your specific calling. I want to talk about purposeful living. I don't know how familiar you are with the scriptures in the Bible, but there are 3 specific stories that I want to talk about, 3 individuals that I want to talk about this morning, because there's so much richness in each of their stories. And I know that, like I said, let me back up a little bit and let me kind of organize my thoughts. I have so much that I want to share with you that a lot of times I kind of just babble and I don't structure my thoughts. And so I want to talk about your purpose. I want to talk about dreams. I want to talk about alignment with the will of God. I want to talk about specific callings, perhaps, that the Lord has placed over your life. And given the state of the world, given the way that society has kind of gone sideways, if you will, I think it's the perfect time to refocus, to begin building for the kingdom, to begin to align yourself once again with what God once spoke over your life. I know that at the beginning of 2020, we all had, it was a new decade, that we were all aligned with certain visions and dreams, and we had high hopes, and then all of a sudden it was like the rug was pulled up from underneath us, and chaos and dysfunction and fear and so many things were just thrown at us. And 5 years have passed since then, and there are still individuals that are sitting in their living rooms that are not being intentional about dreaming once again, about picking up that baton, about giving God the time of day to speak into their hearts and really focus on or realign yourself with what God once spoke over your life. If you take a moment and you look at your life and you begin to analyze and to do self-inventory, perhaps there are many things in your heart that you once believed in your mind and in the core of your essence of who you are, that you knew without a shadow of a doubt that were going to come to pass. And for whatever circumstances that life threw at you, they didn't come to pass as you thought they would. And you became discouraged and you took your eyes off of the finish line. You stopped dreaming. This is the message that I hope will get you back on track and allow you to dream again, to believe again, to hope again, to have faith again, to walk by faith once again. These three biblical characters that I absolutely love. We're going to be talking a little bit about Noah. We're going to be talking about Moses, and we're going to talk about Nehemiah as well. If we look at the story of Noah, he was a man that found favor in the eyes of the Lord in the midst of so much vile activities and debauchery and disgusting behaviors, if you will. He was a man that did not give in to societal lifestyles. He feared the Lord, he loved the Lord, and he stood by what he knew. This man was instructed to build an ark so that he would be able to save his family, his wife, his 3 sons, and his 3 daughter-in-laws. Humanity had never experienced rain. And here you have a man of God listening to the instruction of the Lord and believing him for something he had never seen before. The floodgates of heaven were going to be opened, and it was going to rain for 40 days and 40 nights. He believed the Lord in the middle of the society. A single man had the faith to be able to save humanity. And I don't mean the entirety of humanity, but his descendants. He took the word of the Lord and he believed him and he walked by faith. And if you're not familiar with the story of Noah, I would encourage you to read it. You can read it in Genesis 6, where God instructs him to build this ark. But what I absolutely love, and a lot of times we bypass the details that God gives them. He gives them the measurements. He gives them the kind of wood that he's supposed to use for this ark, the levels that he's going to have to build. There is so much richness and so much detail. But the first thing that had to occur was obedience. Noah had to believe God and obey him in order for things to start happening. And I know without a shadow of a doubt that there are many of you guys out there right now where you are waiting for God's clear instruction. And that's why I'm going to talk about Nehemiah as well in just a moment. I want you to really take that into consideration before you completely disqualify yourself. But here we have Noah having heard the voice of God, having heard clear instructions from the Lord, having to walk by faith, having never experienced rain, having never known what a flood was like. And over the course of several years, if I'm not mistaken, it was between 70 and 120 years that it took him to build this ark. He had to face rejection. He had to face mockery, where people thought he had lost his mind. But he stood on the instruction of the Lord and he built. And oftentimes we don't understand that what God instructs us to do is so much greater than us. It doesn't have to do just with our person and our immediate family, but generations to come. And so sometimes we become so comfortable in saying, well, it's just me. It's not a big deal. I'm not going to make a difference. And you are absolutely wrong. You have to understand that there is so much more on the line than just your life, than just your obedience. There is weight in your obedience. There are generations that are affected by your obedience or your disobedience. I mean, if we look at Moses as well, I love the story of Moses. And if you're not familiar with it as well, you can find it in the book of Exodus 25, where God instructed him to build a tabernacle. I love looking at the details. God is in the details. And I understand that perhaps, like I said just a short moment ago, where we're looking for clear instruction, where we're looking for God to part the windows of heaven, the gates of heaven, and come down with the archangel Gabriel and Michael and give us clear instructions as to what to do. But oftentimes it does not work like that. Yes, God gave Moses specific and clear, beautiful, detailed instructions of how he wanted the tabernacle to look. But if we look at Nehemiah, God nowhere in the Bible instructed him to rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. But it was an aching, a yearning, a burden in his heart, in the heart of Nehemiah, that brought him to rebuild this wall. And why do I share this? Because like I said, oftentimes we know that God doesn't speak to us the way that he did face to face with Moses anymore. We have the Spirit of the living God living inside of us. But unless we receive 20 or 30 confirmations or some kind of sign, we don't want to move. And there is no faith in not moving. Faith without works is dead. There is urgency in building what the Lord is calling you to build. And by building, I mean, what is your calling? What do you have in your hands? What gifts and talents has God given you? Just like Nehemiah, like I said, he didn't receive instruction. God, nowhere in the Bible does he tell him, rebuild the wall of Jerusalem for me. He had a knowing. There was righteous indignation about the state of Jerusalem and his people, which brought him to move. What have you been sitting on? What dreams have become dormant in your life? What instruction are you waiting for? Like I said, God is not going to come down from heaven with the Archangel Gabriel on one side and the Archangel Michael on the other side and tell you, thus saith the Lord. You have to begin moving by faith. In order for something to happen, you have to start taking action. God in his mercy, a lot of times I feel like we become stuck or paralyzed over fear of making a mistake, of not making the right choice or turn or taking the wrong turn. But God is merciful. God is omnipresent. God is all-knowing. God in his perfect mercy and his perfect will, he will redirect you. And let me break it down to you. Let me just clear the air here for you. You are going to make mistakes. You are not God. You are not perfect. But even in these mistakes, God has already taken all of this into consideration. He is not looking for perfection. He is looking for someone to be obedient, to be willing to move by faith, to walk by faith. If you are waiting for perfect circumstances, I hate to break it to you, but they are never going to come. And if that still doesn't convince you, we can also look at, for example, Prophet Elisha, where he helped a widow. There was a widow in the Bible, in the second book of Kings, if I'm not mistaken, where she was a widow and she had lost her husband. She was indebted up to her neck. They were looking to take both her sons to be able to pay off the debt so they can work as slaves and pay off the debt. She comes to Prophet Elisha and he tells her, what do you have in your home? And she says, I have nothing. All I have is but a bit of oil. And he gives her instructions to go and gather empty vessels from her neighbors, as many as she can. He then instructs her to fill those vessels with that oil that she has in her home. The widow goes on to do exactly what Prophet Elisha asked of her. And when all the vessels had been filled, she goes back to Prophet Elisha and says, they're filled. Prophet Elisha then instructs her to sell those vessels of oil in order to pay off the debt and to keep the remaining oil and survive off of that. Why do I share this with you? Because there are gifts and talents that you already possess, that the Lord has given you, that you have not put to use, whether it is because of fear. What will people say? What will my family say? Will I make it? Will people mock me? Do you not think that Noah was mocked time and time again between those 70 to 120 years that it took him to build that ark? He was, but he did not derail to the left or to the right of what God instructed him. And I feel that many individuals have stopped, many of you guys have stopped listening to the voice of God, not because God stopped talking, but because the voice of the accusers and the people that are criticizing you has become louder than God's voice in your life. What has God placed inside of you? With this widow, we're talking about her home. She had oil in her home. We are now the temple, the home of the Holy Spirit. What has He placed inside of you to give to the world? In this season, there is so much riding on you, on your obedience, on your follow through. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of love and of power and of a sound mind. If you have been paralyzed by fear, I want to remind you that you are not building this on your own, that you are not walking alone, that if God instructed you to go somewhere, it's because He already has something prepared for you. But in order for anything to happen, if you hear anything of what I've said this morning, in order for anything to happen, you need to obey and take action. Nothing will happen unless you begin putting one foot in front of the other. It is time to build. There is so much darkness in this world. You were called to be light. If God placed leadership inside of you, begin utilizing that. Begin instructing and feeding the flock of God. if he called you to be an entrepreneur, if he called you to be a creative, an artist, if he called you to be a teacher of his word, wherever he is sending you, whatever he has instructed, pick up your cross. Begin putting one foot in front of the other by faith. You don't have to see the finish line, but you do have to begin moving in order for something to happen. And if you happen to make a mistake along the way, or 2 or 3, rest assured that he has already taken it into consideration. And that, like Romans 8:28 says, all things work for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. There are so many out there right now that are walking around confused, that are walking around uninspired, that are walking around without purpose, not because they don't have purpose, but because they are not aligned with the will of God for their lives. So many shattered dreams, so many things that you can do for the kingdom that are waiting for you to say yes. Books that haven't been written, stories that have not been told, companies that have not been created. But all of this lays in the balance of your obedience. The weight of your obedience is bigger than you imagine. Not just for you, not just for your children if you have children, but for society. It is like a domino effect. Your obedience is like a domino effect. I want to encourage you this day to take your eyes off of your problems, to close your ears to the naysayers. And if that naysayer is yourself, I want to encourage you to stop speaking death into your life. I want to encourage you to put your eyes back on the finish line. Noah built an ark, having never seen rain. Moses built a tabernacle for the Lord, having never built one before. Nehemiah was burdened for the sake of Jerusalem and for the sake of his people. And he went on to rebuild and encourage his people. It took one person, one yes to the Lord, one step of obedience that went on to change the course of history. I know that I am speaking to someone today. I know that the chaos and the preoccupations of the world perhaps have become burdensome and heavy and noisy, where you've not been able to hear the voice of God clearly. But today the Lord is calling to you to start over or to begin for the first time. The world is in shambles, yes. Evil is amongst us, but there is no greater power that has ever been or ever will be than that of our Lord Jesus. And his spirit, the spirit of the living God, lives inside of us. Give yourself an opportunity to dream again. Allow the Lord to do great and mighty things through you, through your obedience. And under no circumstance allow the enemy to rob you of what you were created to become. I know that there was rapture talk, but it's not happening just yet. So until the Lord comes back, which the Bible does tell us that it will be like in the days of Noah, where people were marrying and drinking and going about their lives. Until that day comes, you keep building. Until that day comes, you keep prospering. Until that day comes, you keep believing that God has plans of good for you, and walk by faith and not by sight. Do not allow fear to burden you or derail you or delay you from what the Lord has for you. Dream again. Build again. Believe again. Don't wait for somebody else to pick up your baton or to pick up where you left off because you couldn't believe the Lord for greater things. That is all that I have for you today. I do hope that this message reaches the right individuals. I do hope to see you again soon. Until next time, God bless each and every one of you. Ciao.